During an ominous night, a cup of tea and a beautiful man lie on the floor. A woman coldly stares at the man. She orders the knights to get rid of the crown prince for her beloved's sake. She has committed an injustice. The woman then walks away from the bloody room, full of dead bodies. By committing such treason, the woman thinks that her beloved will be happy to be a king. She enters the throne room with anticipation. The red-haired man sitting on the throne asks her for updates. She mentions how she got rid of Crown Prince Alfonso. The man smiles, and his laughter echoes in the throne room. He tells Ariadne that she did a great job. Ariadne sweetly smiles. Now that the cleanup is done, the man plans to make Ariadne the noblest woman in the kingdom. Ariadne feels happy that Cesare said that. She hugs him, thinking that this is for the best. She can be happy alongside her beloved Cesare. After the coup, Cesare became the Etruscan kingdom's regent, and 9 years quickly passed. Ariadne also fulfilled her role as the head of the palace's internal affairs. However, despite her efforts to fulfill the duties of the previous queens, people still talk about her humble background and call her unqualified as a noble. The nobles wonder when Cesare will marry Ariadne. Rumors also say that Cesare can't marry and have a legitimate child. Despite those rumors, Ariadne believes that Cesare loves her. Ariadne suddenly hears that Cesare is a concubine's child and that he is actually Alfonso's half-brother. A countess claims that a half-breed can't receive the blessings of the heavens. Ariadne snaps and attacks the countess who said it. She tells her to badmouth her instead of Caesar. Cesare wonders what is happening. Ariadne smiles at him, but Caesar runs over to the noble instead. The noblewoman then talks badly about Ariadne. Ariadne can't believe that Caesar didn't run to her rescue. Instead, Cesare grabs her and tells Ariadne to do the work properly. He claims that the countess is more useful than Ariadne. He tells her not to act shamelessly or he won't make her his wife. However, more years pass by, and Ariadne is still a fiance, while Cesare has another woman. One night, Cesare forces himself on Ariadne. Ariadne thinks she will now be Cesare's wife. Just then, Cesare mentions that Isabella will be the queen, making Ariadne shocked. Ariadne pushes away Cesare and points out that Isabella, her sister, is Alfonso's wife and is an impure widow. Cesare claims Isabella has remained pure throughout her marriage. Ariadne insists that her sister is impure and had a miscarriage. Cesare glares at her and exclaims that women's enemies are also women. He calls Ariadne an inferior woman, and Ariadne can't believe what she just heard. Ariadne cries and mentions how Cesare promised her to be his wife. Cesare then mentions that Ariadne is inferior compared to the noble Isabella. Ariadne now realizes that Cesare has been in love with Isabella since the start. Cesare laughs, while claiming that Isabella was meant for him from the beginning. He was mortified to be engaged to Ariadne. Ariadne falls as she realizes that she is just a replacement. Cesare chuckles and claims that she is not even worth being called a replacement. Ariadne exclaims that she helped with the treason and even sacrificed her ring finger. She gave up everything for Caesar. Cesare turns his head and calls for someone to lock up Ariadne, who has turned crazy. Ariadne gets dragged away and locked up in the West Tower. Ariadne recalls how Caesar told her how she resembles lilies, pure and obedient. Ariadne can't help but smile. She wakes up from it and realizes that today is the coronation ceremony. Caesar has been officially crowned king. Ariadne should have been beside him. Just then, someone comments on how beautiful the valley's lilies are, but the roses in the garden are far more precious. Isabella asks how Ariadne's sleep went. Ariadne angrily asks what is between her and Caesar. Isabella tells her not to talk badly about her husband. Ariadne apologizes for what she did with Alfonso. However, Isabella was talking about Cesare as her husband. She claims that she is meant to be the most glorious woman in the kingdom. She calls Ariadne shameless for trying to be the queen. She claims she has experienced a lot of bad things, especially the miscarriage rumors, and she wants Ariadne to take responsibility for them. Ariadne angrily asks why her sister is doing this. Isabella claims it doesn't matter who, but she wants someone who will make her the most glorious woman in the kingdom. Ariadne despairs, as she deeply loves Cesar. Unlike Isabella, she blames her sister for ruining her love life. Isabella laughs out loud and claims that Cesare knelt before her. Cesare knelt before her. Cesare told her how he thinks of Isabella while embracing Ariadne. He also commented on how Ariadne's figure resembles a man's. and Isabella is way more petite and fragile. Isabella asks if there was ever a man who wanted Ariadne. Ariadne realizes now that she is just a replacement. Isabella teaches her sister not to hopelessly devote herself to a man because they don't know what gratitude is. She claims it is better to raise their value themselves to make men swoon over them. Ariadne falls to her knees, thinking that Cesare has left her. However, Isabella knows that Cesare will also get tired of her and remember Ariadne, who was faithful by his side. Knowing that, she plans to kill her own sister, so there will be no problems in the future. Ariadne gets stabbed from behind and is killed by her own beloved sister. The bleeding Ariadne finds everything unfair. She wonders where everything went wrong. She wishes she could turn back time. She remembers the golden commandment. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Ariadne wishes to have a life like that and wonders why she can't. A voice asks her if she can live by the golden commandment. Ariadne confirms that she can do it without a doubt. Ariadne opens her eyes and discovers the place where she used to live. She notices her small hands and checks the mirror. She returns to her younger self. She notices a mole she didn't have before. A woman appears and tells her to get ready for work. Ariadne swears to protect herself this time. She won't stand still anymore. The maid keeps shouting at Ariadne, calling her the daughter of a lowly servant. Ariadne grits her teeth as she hears what the maid says. Another maid comes and exclaims that someone came to take Ariadne back. Ariadne remembers that this was the day when her father called her back. Cardinal the mayor was indeed a cardinal, but had a wife and children. Unlike the others, the cardinal can't leave his wife and let an aristocrat, Lucrezia, be his mistress. Lucrezia behaved like the cardinal's official wife and had 3 children who received the same treatment as the first wife's children. The second daughter, Isabella, is hailed as the most beautiful woman in the city. However, the cardinal also had a child with a servant, and that is Ariadne. She was kicked out for being the child of a lowly servant and lived on a farm. Ariadne later arrives at the cardinal's mansion. She meets her father, who is sitting menacingly in his office. They glare at each other and the unfilial daughter expresses her joy at seeing her father. The cardinal stares at her and is glad that Ariadne has grown well, despite being uneducated. Ariadne apologizes for being lacking and swears not to embarrass the cardinal. Someone agrees on the side, and it is the haughty mistress, Lucrezia. She warns Ariadne to be graceful as a woman all the time. Ariadne always thought of Lucrezia as the standard, but she looks no different from a lowly person. Ariadne knows how to make Lucrezia bitter in front of the cardinal and menacingly smiles. Ariadne bows to her and claims to be her best daughter, as she said. She respectfully calls Lucrezia lady, like how the servants address her. A confused cardinal asks Lucrezia, the mistress, who gets flustered and asks Ariadne to call her mother. However, Ariadne calls her mom instead. Just then, someone arrives at the cardinal's office. Ariadne gets goosebumps as she hears the person's voice. Isabella welcomes Ariadne back to their family. Ariadne backs off as she feels creeped out. The sisters look at each other. Ariadne has always thought of Isabella as the perfect sister. Isabella had always had a beautiful smile, and that very smile stabbed Ariadne in the back. Ariadne won't be cowardly this time. Isabella reaches out her hand as she tells Ariadne to call her sister. Ariadne puts up a poker smile and thanks Isabella. The cardinal is happy to see the sisters getting along. He really likes it. Ariadne and the others go out of the cardinal's office. Lucrezia reminds Ariadne not to cause any trouble. This woman, Ariadne, hasn't done anything yet. Someone then screams as she refuses to have Ariadne as her sister, who grew up on a farm. Arabella points out how Ariadne is a lowborn. Before, Ariadne couldn't rebut, but now she knows how to break their spirits. Ariadne teases Arabella that their mother and father like Isabella more than her. Arabella gets mad and pushes Ariadne. However, Arabella's expression darkens as she sees Isabella coming down the stairs in pain. Ariadne actually dodged and had her say. Arabella gets pushed instead. Arabella is scared of what she did. The cardinal comes out shouting after hearing the loud noise. Arabella gets flustered and points to Ariadne as the culprit. The cardinal immediately lashes out at Ariadne. Ariadne apologizes and claims that Isabella was protecting her. The two sisters are both surprised by Ariadne's words. Ariadne then tells their father that Arabella was joking around and pushed Ariadne down. Arabella starts exclaiming that she didn't do anything at all. Ariadne claims that she might be uneducated, but she doesn't lie. She then tells their father to ask Isabella. Isabella hesitates to answer. Ariadne wants her to show her true colors. Isabella claims Arabella was just kidding around and asks their father to forgive Arabella. Ariadne smiles, seeing Isabella do a great job. This is a chance for Ariadne to be a good sister to her half-sister. Arabella runs toward Isabella, who asks her to be careful next time. The cardinal then calls out to Arabella and punishes her by locking her in her room for 2 weeks with bread and water only. Arabella tries to plead that it was not her fault. The cardinal then extends the sentence by a week, seeing that Arabella is talking back, and servants help Isabella be treated. The cardinal looks for Lucrezia as Arabella still claims that it was not her fault. Ariadne watches everything as the cardinal shouts, and Isabella leaves. She smirks at how easy this is. Days later, Isabella refuses to marry a rumored illegitimate child. She reminds her father that they should elevate their status. The cardinal puts down his glasses and claims that he also knows about the rumors. Cesare is officially the cousin of the crown prince, but is actually the king's bastard son. The cardinal also doesn't want his daughter to marry such a person. Lucrezia then suggests marrying a legitimate child and naming Ariadne for the betrothal. The cardinal finds the suggestion tempting and menacingly smirks. Meanwhile, Ariadne fully accepts the fact that she went back in time. She swears not to make the same mistake this time. She wonders what to do to prevent her betrothal to Caesar. She considers marrying someone else or running away after getting rich. The latter option is the best choice for her, as she crosses out the option to marry. She knows there will be no happy ending for her, where Cesare falls in love with her, and they live happily ever after. What she experienced was the opposite. She feels angered by her memory and wants Cesare to pay for what he has done. Just then, a maid enters the room, bringing some clothes for Ariadne. Ariadne recognizes her as Isabella's personal maid, Maletta. Maletta orders her to get dressed and join the family dinner. Ariadne claims that Maletta must be busy because she is not helping her get dressed. Maletta laughs at Ariadne, claiming that Ariadne is old enough to dress herself. She further claims that Ariadne had no maids for her on the farm in the first place. Ariadne turns around as her head starts to ache. Ariadne taps Maletta's shoulder and slaps her out of nowhere. Ariadne tells Maletta to know her place. Maletta gets mad and exclaims that Ariadne is also a peasant maid's daughter. Ariadne's expression darkens. Maletta further exclaims that Ariadne is not even a nobleman's child but a clergyman's, while the other 2 ladies were born to noble women. Maletta then wonders if the cardinal got her pregnant. Her child will be at the same level as Ariadne. Ariadne raises her hand and slaps Maletta so hard that she falls. She claims that the slap was for insulting her father and her ugly bout of jealousy. She warns Maletta to watch her tongue and tells her to get out. As Maletta runs away, Ariadne feels the worst about being hit by her reality. She grits her teeth and swears not to let a man sway her life again. In order to become independent, Ariadne needs to cultivate her own power by finding an ally. Just then, Lucrezia, Isabella, and Maletta enter her room. Lucrezia gets mad at Ariadne for hitting a household member. Maletta acts like the total victim of the event. Lucrezia shouts at Ariadne, who is calmly facing them. Ariadne bows and claims that she can't hold herself back after Maletta insulted her father. Everyone listens as Ariadne shares what Maletta uttered before her a few minutes ago. Maletta tries to make a point in front of Lucrezia. Ariadne adds that Maletta mentioned how the cardinal is of common stock. That is why Maletta doesn't want to serve Ariadne, who was born a peasant. Lucrezia will take Ariadne's side because the cardinal's bloodline is a delicate matter. And for the finale, Ariadne mentions how Maletta imagines getting the favor of the cardinal and carrying a child with the same status as Ariadne. Lucrezia looks like she is out for blood. She grabs Maletta's hair and speaks with 10 lashes. Maletta asks for forgiveness while being dragged away. Lucrezia then tells Ariadne to approach her instead of not being ladylike and striking a servant. Ariadne apologizes for losing her composure. As atonement for her behavior, she offers herself to be banished for 3 days in the Rambolet shelter, surprising Lucrezia. Ariadne also asks to bring Maletta with her so they can make amends and gain the maid's faith. A flustered Lucrezia claims that the shelter is too much. Just then, Isabella suggests 5 days of atonement instead, smiling brightly. Ariadne gets creeped out and agrees with her sister while wearing a poker face. The next day, a carriage arrives somewhere. Ariadne gets out of it and sees the hopeless condition of the Rambolet shelter, while the trembling Maletta watches her. Ariadne looks around As expected, this is the perfect place to hatch her plan. Queen Margaret, King Leo IIE's wife, founded the Ram Bullet Shelter to aid the poor. However, the allocated treasure for this cause was meager, resulting in many peasants who entered the shelter perishing. Ariadne and Maleta both enter the shelter and encounter exhausted peasants. Ariadne couldn't contain her joy when she saw Maleta trembling in fear. Startled, Maleta turned away when Ariadne called out to her. Ariadne further taunted Maleta by informing her that Isabella could no longer protect her. If Isabella had spoken up for Maleta, she wouldn't bear any scars on her back. But Maleta could only avert her gaze from Ariadne, still chuckling. Ariadne planned to join the rest of the peasants. Maleta, terrified of the shelter, remained unaware of Ariadne's plan to make her completely subservient. Ariadne walked actively, searching for someone, with Maleta closely following and trembling in fear. Surveying the area, Ariadne noticed numerous peasants on the brink of death and remembered that the person she sought resided in the shelter. In the distance, a woman with red hair called out to her sister. Ariadne stopped upon hearing the voice, smirked menacingly, and asked Maleta if she saw the little girl with red hair. Maleta played coy. Ariadne then squeezed Maleta's shoulder and whispered, asking if she recognized her own little sister. Maleta's expression darkened, and she could only cover her mouth. Ariadne threatened Maleta, stating that if she didn't comply, she would leave her in the shelter to perish. In that case, Maleta would be reunited with her sister, and they would both die together. Maleta clenched her teeth but refused to admit anything, continuously asking for forgiveness from Ariadne. Her expression was one of complete terror, as if she were about to wet herself. Ariadne grew serious, grabbing Maleta's shoulder and asking if she was implying that Ariadne was lying. Maleta's expression worsened when Ariadne grabbed her face and demanded an answer. Upon touching Maleta's face, Ariadne felt a surge of electricity. She saw a vision of a person wearing a white robe who asked Maleta and her sister, Sancha, who was smarter and more hardworking. They could only choose one of them. Maleta's sister replied that they were raised together and promised to work hard, pleading not to be separated. Maleta stared at her sister, growing angry. She shoved her and asked the person to choose her instead. Maleta claimed that her sister, Sancha, was too frail to do real work and accused her of being a petty thief. The person, showing a faint smirk, took off her hood. It was Isabella. She chose Maleta to work for her. Although Maleta was thankful for being chosen, Sancha felt saddened and called out to her sister. Maleta immediately grabbed her head and warned her to stay quiet. Maleta explained that one of them had to work so that they could both survive. She told Sancha to stay quiet and be patient. The vision ended when Maleta joined Isabella and left the shelter. Ariadne gasped for air and felt dizzy. Maleta offered help, causing Ariadne to freeze up as if seeing a ghost. Ariadne was confused about what she had seen, unsure if it was a hallucination or a vision from the past. Ariadne clenched her hand and walked towards Sancha, intending to confirm whether what she had seen was true. Sancha, looking malnourished, asked if the person she was seeing was Maleta. Ariadne knelt in front of Sancha and inquired about her well-being. To confirm her suspicions, Ariadne asked if Sancha had an older sister who worked for a wealthy household. Sancha was surprised and immediately nodded. Ariadne continued, asking if her sister had told her that one of them had to succeed for both of them to have a better chance in life. Sancha couldn't believe that Ariadne knew what Maleta had said. Ariadne couldn't believe it either, that her suspicions and the vision she had seen were true. Ariadne stood up, thanked Sancha, and urged her to take care of herself. Sancha begged her not to leave and expressed her desire to speak to her sister. She explained that she hadn't spoken to her sister since she left for work. Fearing this, Ariadne wanted to confirm whether her sister had ever contacted her. Sancha confirmed that it was true, and that this was the first time she had seen her sister since then. Ariadne examined Sancha from head to toe and asked Maleta if what Sancha said was the truth. Maleta, sweating profusely, couldn't give a straight answer. She replied that she had never seen Sancha in her life before. Sancha's expression darkened. Feeling abandoned, she grabbed Ariadne's clothes and begged for her help. Ariadne instructed Maleta to bring the shelter's manager. 2 days had passed since they met Sancha. Ariadne sat outside, leaning against a tree, starving. In a flashback, when Ariadne met the manager, she requested more food for Sancha. The manager declined, stating that they couldn't afford any special treatment, even if she was his eminence's daughter. Ariadne understood and proposed an alternative. She sacrificed her own ration of meals for the day and asked for it to be given to Sancha. Ariadne felt weak, wishing only for Sancha to have a day's worth of meals. But it had already been 3 days. Ariadne was still puzzled by what she had seen before. It seemed like a part of Maleta's memories. Ariadne attempted to touch Maleta's face again, but nothing happened. Ariadne concluded that the vision required more than physical contact. Lost in thought, she was startled when Prince Alfonso reached out to offer her an apple. Looking up, she was surprised to see him and realized he was asking if she was hungry. Ariadne's expression turned to terror as she remembered killing Prince Alfonso. She quickly regained her composure and accepted the apple, realizing she hadn't sinned against the prince yet. Accepting the apple meant accepting a new opportunity in her life. Despite the suddenness of the situation, Ariadne saw it as a great chance to get to know Prince Alfonso. He had heard a rumor that Ariadne had been giving her meals to a sick girl in the shelter. After eating the apple, Ariadne felt relieved after 3 days of fasting, thinking about what to say to make a good impression. She responded to Prince Alfonso, and Ariadne felt warm inside and chuckled when he complimented her. They both understood the importance of food and rarely gave it away. Ariadne explained that she only gave away the bread because it was inedible, lacking milk and butter, which made the texture coarse. Prince Alfonso smiled and sarcastically asked if the bread from the shelter was really that bad. They had a wonderful conversation, but Ariadne knew she shouldn't confess that she knew his true identity. Prince Alfonso asked how long she would be staying, and she replied only until the next day. He then asked if she would continue giving away her food. Ariadne hadn't planned on it, but since she was able to eat an apple, she imagined she could last another day. Prince Alfonso was happy to hear this answer. He then took out delicious snacks from his pocket and gave them to her. Ariadne was surprised at first, but realized that this might bring her closer to him. She accepted the food but had to bid farewell to the prince. Prince Alfonso felt disappointed, knowing their conversation would end so soon. He wondered when they would meet again. Ariadne had to leave it at that for now. Before departing, Prince Alfonso asked for her name. She smiled and told him her full name. Ariadne smiled as she saw her smiling face surrounded by beautiful flowers. Prince Alfonso couldn't help but show affection. Ariadne returned to the manor with Sancha after completing her punishment. They were immediately confronted by her stepmother, who thought Ariadne was playing a bad joke. Before her stepmother could do anything worse, Isabella rushed toward them and noticed the prince's initials on the handkerchief Ariadne had handed her. Isabella recognized the initials right away. Ariadne explained that she had met the prince at the Rambouillet, thinking he was inspecting the place since the queen oversees it. Ariadne had only wanted to take care of Sancha's health, but instead, the prince entrusted the child to her care. She didn't want to refuse the token and insult her father's good name. Her stepmother was still angry, considering it inappropriate to bring a peasant into the manor without permission. She asked if the prince had also asked Ariadne to insult her. As they were about to be kicked out, Isabella intervened and offered to intern at the Rambouillet. The mother slapped Isabella, stating that such a place was not fit for a lady. Isabella requested that Sancha stay, promising that if she were to meet the prince at a party, it would be a perfect story to appeal to the family's benevolence. An argument ensued between the mother and daughter, which was part of Ariadne's plan. All Ariadne needed was for Sancha to work at the manor. Lost in her thoughts, Isabella snatched the handkerchief and thanked Ariadne for her help. Ariadne realized that nothing had changed and clenched her hand. She understood that anything she had could be taken away on a whim. Sancha expressed gratitude for Ariadne's help and swore to repay her kindness one day. Ariadne patted her head and thanked her. After a few days, Ariadne's family received an invitation from the queen. Her stepmother and sister could only guess the queen's intentions. Ariadne, looking from the stairs, felt disgusted since, in her previous life, neither of them was ever invited to the palace. Arriving in her room, both Maleta and Sancha were inside, informing Ariadne to get dressed as the carriage from the palace had arrived for her. Surprised by the invitation, Ariadne glanced at the bed and saw her clothes. She smiled mischievously and asked Sancha to try on her outfit just for fun. According to the sacred scripture, Saint Gon of Jesarts was revered for 2 martyrdom acts. In his first martyrdom, he died alone and was shunned by those around him. However, he performed a resurrection miracle and sacrificed himself again to prevent a catastrophe in the realm. Only then was the god of Jess arch-praised by the people. The nobles of San Carlo enjoy church sermons about Saint Gon's second sacrifice. But today's sermon mainly focused on his first sacrifice, spoken in the language of the Gallico kingdom. Ariadne assumed that Lucrezia, her stepmother, and Isabella didn't understand a single word of today's sermon. Ariadne knew Lucrezia lacked refinement, and Isabella had recently started learning Gallico. Ariadne noticed a person from a distance, assuming it was Queen Margaret. She remembered only seeing the queen in portraits in her past life, but she could already tell by her dignified air. As the sermon was about to end, but still in Gallico, both Lucrezia and Isabella sent a man out loud, drawing attention. People started whispering to each other, admiring Isabella's beauty. Isabella complimented the queen for requesting the sermon about God of Jess Arch's martyrdom, sharing that it was one of her favorite passages from the scripture. Proudly, Lucrezia asked Isabella which part was her favorite. Isabella expressed her love for the second sacrifice, confusing Ariadne as the sermon focused on the first sacrifice. The church was surprised by Isabella's interpretation and whispered about her immaturity and envy of the saint's fame. Ariadne saw that Isabella would make their entire family a laughing stock. She immediately shared that her favorite part was the saint's act of courage, explaining how she understood his fear of facing death yet still bravely confronting it. People around Ariadne showered her with compliments. She felt relieved, thinking that what she did was probably enough to save their family's reputation. As they left for the lobby, the queen noticed Ariadne, recognizing her knowledge of Gallico. The queen was introduced to the wife and daughters of Cardinal de Mayer, the person Ariadne least expected, who had insulted her former fiance in her past life, complimented Isabella's dress. The woman inquired about the dressmaker, and Isabella mentioned their family seamstress. Upon hearing Isabella, the woman scoffed and insulted them, suggesting the seamstress might have thought of the time, pointing out the difference in outfits between Ariadne and Isabella. Lucrezia felt insulted as the woman brought up the illegitimacy of Ariadne. The woman stated that children shouldn't be blamed for their parents' transgressions. Isabella replied that Ariadne had been suffering from ill health and had recently returned from the countryside. She added that their seamstress was working hard to prepare appropriate clothes for Ariadne. Isabella explained that she had lent Ariadne her own dress for the time being, attributing any misunderstanding to her taste in clothing. Ariadne realized Isabella's intention but still followed along. When Ariadne stood up and turned to show the dress, her dirty chemise was revealed to everyone. This was part of Ariadne's plan to humiliate Isabella. Not only was Isabella questioned about the clothes she supposedly owned, but also her mother and how she treated her daughter, who was less than a common maid. The queen silenced everyone and asked Isabella if the chemise once belonged to her. Isabella couldn't answer directly. The queen noticed Isabella's lies and asked both Lucrezia and Isabella to return home. Ariadne felt satisfaction as Lucrezia was treated like her father's mistress. The queen instructed a helper to escort Ariadne and provide her with the proper chemise. Ariadne was caught off guard by the queen's words. As Ariadne followed the helper, she realized the place was familiar since she had stayed in the palace for 9 years as Cesare's fiance. Closing her eyes, she accidentally bumped into the helper and overheard her greeting someone. When Ariadne saw Alfonso, both of them were surprised to see each other once again. Upon seeing Alfonso, Ariadne quickly composed herself and acted as if it was her first time meeting him as a prince. Matron Carla, a trusted attendant of Queen Margaret, immediately warned Ariadne about her manners. Matron Carla introduced Alfonso with his formal title as the sole sign of King Leo EI and Queen Margaret. Alfonso de Carlo. Ariadne suspected that the queen would be aware of her interaction with the prince. Ariadne greeted Alfonso again, this time with better manners. Matron Carla and Alfonso argued because the prince wanted to keep his title a secret from Ariadne. Alfonso enjoyed being treated as a friend by Ariadne, which angered Matron Carla due to their different social statuses. While staring at Alfonso, Ariadne realized he resembled a rebellious youth. However, when their eyes met, Alfonso smiled faintly at her. He grabbed Ariadne's wrist and happily dragged her to a garden, concerned they might fall. Suddenly Alfonso let go of her hand. Ariadne laughed at his reaction and teased him about treating him as his highness to avoid any offense.